Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm Derek Hudson. Welcome to deep conversations with interesting people about essential dynamics, a framework that we've been working on to help people and organizations figure out what to do in challenging times. I'm joined today with my colleague Dave Kane from Unconstrained. Dave, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Hey, Derek. Thanks very much. Yeah, we got some positivity today.
Positivity.
Yeah.
The last couple episodes we've been talking about dysfunction. And I think we want to bounce into the opposite side of that. So, do you have any specific directions that you think we should take this?
Well, you were sort of teasing at the end of the last one, but I do want to just dive into the whole system flow, and maybe we just start off jumping right into, well, what is it? And then we can move on from there.
What is flow? Well, and in some ways, we spent a number of episodes talking about when things aren't working well and when you're stuck. That's typically not just one cause; it's an interrelated thing. It's a system. So we call that system dysfunction. So the opposite is when the system works together and you get to flow. And there's a bunch of different ways to look at flow, but if you think about an organization level, it's when we know what we're trying to do, why we're here, what we're trying to do, and we actually know how we do it. And all the pieces kind of line up and you do it. And here's the thing is it's hard because we still face opposition. We're still trying to change the universe by adding value somehow. It's hard, but it feels good. And so maybe that's one of the conversations we've had with clients and others recently is what does it feel like? And it's not sitting on a beach with your bank account filling with money. It's doing something meaningful that's hard and feeling like you're in the zone, you're accomplishing something, you're doing it with your team. Anyway, those are some early thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's not easy. It's not everything's just coming to you. It's just you're hitting your stride, but there is that challenge in front of you. And to me, like on a personal level, you can hit flow. And I keep coming back to, early on in my career, working on business cases that had, significant consequences for the company. We had excellent technical side. We had excellent marketing people, everybody contributing, long hours, huge challenges, but we all loved it. And we worked hard and things just came together and every day you felt you hit your stride. And to me, that was like a flow. And I keep coming back to saying, okay, so now we just need companies to feel that where the pieces are fitting together. There are still obstacles, but you take them on, you overcome them, and things just work. Is that kind of how you see flow?
Yeah. And so I like the way you say that. Things just work. So then it sounds like, well, it's easy.
Well, you need the conflict, right? It can't just be easy because what in life is meaningful without a challenge to it?
That's right. So it doesn't just work, but we figured out a way to work together to do the hard thing.
Right.
I was in a session just a few weeks ago when we were talking about flow, and it was a great quotation somebody just threw out of their own head. When you have system flow, you're challenged in the best way possible. And so it's not that we don't have a challenge. It's that we feel we've got a system we can trust, people we can trust. And it's worth, I guess going back to this, well, it just works. It just works because we've deliberately set up a system that works in the environment that we have. So there's a lot to that, but when you have it, it feels to some degree effortless, or if not effortless, then at least there's a return of energy. And so you have the capacity to do the hard thing.
I like that return of energy because it is not effortless.
It's not effortless. Yeah.
It is everybody sort of putting in their piece. But I mean, we've touched on the flows, so maybe there's a question for you. So we've talked about value flow, cash flow, information, and energy flows.
Mhm.
Do you want to sort of touch on how is that different than system flow?
Well, system flow is when it all comes together. And the way I think about it is that your system has a purpose. In fact, we talk about two purposes, purpose X, purpose Y, some complementary, but sometimes opposing or contradictory purposes that we're trying to reach. And it's our job to balance them and to find how they all come together. And when we have system flow, then we have confidence in the way that we accomplish that. And so if you talk about those other flows that we've talked about, I would go straight to value flow as that's the overriding thing is we are accomplishing step by step our purpose. We're proceeding down the path. We are advancing the ball. We're moving forward. And so that's value flow, and that's critical. I think, and I haven't done enough thinking about it, but I think that these other flows also to apply to our personal lives. We talk about biological systems and mechanical systems, and I think they apply there, but I've thought most about it in organization sense. Cash flow is like the flow of resources, the flow of capacity. In your body, it might be the circulatory system and the respiratory system. You're getting the oxygen to where it's needed by the muscles and the organs. But cash flow isn't value flow. Value flow is accomplishing the purpose. And in an organization, like a business, you accomplish the purpose when the customer gets something that they need and they happily pay you. That value doesn't track the cash flow exactly. In fact, accrual accounting was invented a long time ago because there's a difference between when the cash changes hands and when the value is actually created. And I don't think people understand that enough. So there's value flow and there's cash flow. And cash flow is an important part of system flow. If the cash doesn't flow, the system's going to dry up at some point. It's not going to have the capacity. And then the other flows also support system or part of the system and support system flow. That's of information. That's so that you can make good decisions about what's the best way to operate the system to add value. And then the energy flow is how do you get the capacity in mental capacity, the motivation to do the work, which is hard. And I guess maybe we talk about this idea when you've achieved system flow, you have to have the energy flow has to be there. And it it's like we said, it's not effortless, but it's natural. And so you can do hard things because you're in this system, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
So maybe you could talk about that time in your early career. What was it about that where you worked long hours and you loved it and you kept going?
Youthful energy flow, I guess. No, it was seeing those parts of looking back now of those different flows. Part of it was the energy flow, and it was more of just because you felt you had purpose that was making a difference. But what made it work really well was the information flow and just the communication between all parts contributing into the system. You were never at a loss for trying to figure out where do I get the piece that I need or waiting for it to come. Like it just those pieces were there. It wasn't so much of a cash flow thing because we were business planning, but it was just thinking back to it. It was probably the energy of everybody in the system sort of feeding off each other, and you didn't really get to that point where you started running out of energy because somebody else and whatever they were contributing brought it back up. And that's what allowed you to sort of push through and get to it.
Yeah, I think that's great, but I got to go back because you said a lot there. The purpose that was making a difference. So I think that's where you have to start.
That engagement.
Yeah, and so we've talked about purpose on you know, 57 of 103 episodes, because it's that important, because it's that foundational. Why are we here doing this thing that we're doing? And if we really identify it with it, we believe in it, we agree that that's the thing that we're trying to accomplish. That's why we're here. That aligns efforts. That gives you that sort of synchronicity in your energy flow. And without that, I mean, it's easy to see where if people have different objectives, the energy starts to collide, and
Right.
and that breaks flow. But when you're united, um, the purpose is motivating, and then the alignment resonates.
The
And
purpose is motivating, but also that you see yourself or you see your contribution in that purpose, right?
well, you talked about that in terms of information flow, and in one sense, which is I know how I can contribute. I get feedback when I can contribute that it's actually working or not. I kind of know my place, and I don't mean that in terms of an organization chart. Heaven forbid anyone think that, but it's I can contribute, and I know how to contribute, and I can get feedback from others and from the system when I do contribute. I think
So
we have.
sorry, let
Go
me
ahead.
touch on that because
Yeah.
that isn't actually how I would have thought of that information flow. To me, it's always been more the availability and synchronicity of the information, and everybody has what they need to know in order for it to run properly. But you're tying sort of that information flow to that also understanding of where you are in the system and how you're contributing.
Yeah,
Is that
I think it's all related. So one of the things, of course, that so many organizations in the modern economy are in some sense working in the knowledge economy in some intangible process which you can't see. And then if you talk about remote work on top of that, the only thing you see is what you see on your computer screen and what you might hear in a meeting or something like that. And it's very easy to get isolated and to not be able to go down, walk the shop floor and see where things are flowing or where they're not. And so I think it's critical that people can see how things are flowing in the system and how they contribute to that. If you get that and you have smart people and they're committed to the purpose, then you'll get creativity that you didn't expect.
right?
But if you carve people's jobs up into an inbox, a process, and an outbox, and some other party defines that, and that's the whole perspective that they have, you can't expect them to do anything other than protect that desk and that cycle between the inbox
Yeah,
and the outbox.
you won't see any gains coming. You don't
No,
have a lot
no,
of growth in that system.
yeah. And then the other thing you talked about is energy feeding off of others. If you're the more isolated you are, the less that's likely to happen, either as a receiver or a contributor. I think this is a good time to talk to take the analogy to like a sports team, which one of the reasons I think we like sports so much is you can see the process happening. The objective is very clear, and you can see all those flows happen. And we're here with our buddy Bryn, who's going to be spending the next hockey season with and talking about the Oilers. And so their playoff run wasn't completely consistent, but from game to game to game, you watched that system flow develop. And you had people contributing in ways that were expected and contributing in ways that weren't expected. You had sometimes the team followed a system like even when the performance didn't seem to be there, but it came back. The system eventually worked and they prevailed. And the lucky bounces can't prevail in a 7-game series, but they can in one game. And so I think there's a lot we can take from this idea of looking for system flow in these different areas and then having the experience of participating in it.
Yeah, I like that because the two things that sort of one that you drew on before was that analogy certainly has the conflict in it, right? There's certainly that opposing force, and it almost makes the system work better sometimes, right? And the other piece that I kind of come back to is it's the process. It's not the outcome that you're sort of focusing on. If you just focus on the outcome, it's hard to be repeatable. It's hard to recover when that outcome doesn't happen. But if it's the process or the system, pardon me, I guess is where I should be using there, and you're focusing on that system, then the outcome sort of takes care of itself. It's not, it allows you to be more resilient, I think.
Absolutely. And I think we're probably going to take that as the major topic of the next episode. We'll see where we go in the next 10 minutes here, but because that's a big thing. So we're focusing on achieving system flow. It feels good when you're in it, even though it's hard. There's just different aspects that have to flow. I think one of the other things I want to highlight about system flow is when you have flow and something happens, it's easy to spot. When you don't have flow, you don't know where you're stuck, how many different places are going to rear their ugly heads before you get the product out the door. But when you have flow, you expect things to move, and when they don't move, it's a trigger right away to go and find what's going on. And I think that's something that we don't think about enough is a clean flow that everyone understands. When you lose it, or when there's an imposition that might challenge your flow.
And so you're saying it allows you, I mean, both to recognize that there is something wrong, but it also helps you find it faster.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about, these simple principles, drivers and constraints. Well, the idea of constraint is the only constraint that impacts your flow is the one that's, got the least capacity. And you design your system so you understand which one that is and make sure that nothing else dips below that capacity, because then you start to get sort of a chaotic system. So if that's the case and that's the flow, and something happens outside the constraint, you've got to find it, but you have time because it's not the constraint. And if the constraint goes down, everyone knows right away, and all eyes are on it to fix it. And I think most organizations can't say that they can do that.
What I'd like to do actually is circle back for a second. And the question I'm going to ask you is how do you know you have flow? Because we talked about the flow within the value flow, the cash flow, the energy flow. But I'm guessing when you come into an organization, or if you're a leader in an organization and you're trying to figure out whether you have flow and what you need to do to make it better, do you automatically jump to, okay, I need to start looking at the value flow and the cash flow? Or is there an order that you do it? Or do you ask other questions first? So, because it's kind of one of those, I know it when I see it kind of issues. But what I'm curious of is if you're trying to stop and look at your company, you step back, you're looking at the meta view, or you've invited Derek in to talk to your company and figure things out. Where do you start when assessing how good the flow is?
That's a great question. I think we go back to what being stuck feels like. And you don't know anything about the process of creating value. Maybe you don't even know the value, what the purpose is, but you can sense the frustration, and you can sense, well, you don't have to, your senses don't have to be that good, because when people start talking to you, they tell you that they're frustrated because they don't know if they're performing well, or they've got an idea where performance isn't happening somewhere else. Or you just ask the customer, how's it going? And the customer says, we don't get our stuff on time. Or you ask the employees, and the employees say, I've been here 5 years and I don't know how to get ahead in this organization. And so all those, sort of negative things that we've been talking about are indications that you don't have flow. I would say that if you do have flow, it's because you're trying for it. And if I sit down and talk to someone, say, tell me about your business, and they start describing it in the sense of a system, and they're using the words that we've just used about what flow is, then, they've got flow. You don't have flow accidentally. It doesn't sneak up on you. It's nature is tends to entropy and chaos, and we have to be on top of it to get flow, I think.
So you step in and you get a sense from whether there's this feeling of unrealized potential or how they adapt to challenges and tension, and that sort of gives you a bit of an indication on the quality of the flow there. My sense is you don't necessarily jump to starting to address each of the subflows, right? You go back to first principles of purpose, path, and people, and those types of things, right? And then you have to do a few steps before you get to flow.
Oh, absolutely.
Figure out how to make flow better. Unfortunately, it's not the first thing you fix. There's a few steps in between, and it's the outcome. Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The process is the outcome. Well, the outcome of the work that we do is we want to get to a process that flows. And then I'm reminded of Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. It's not a game you win because there's no final buzzer. And so you keep playing and you want to optimize, the value for your inputs in a certain period, but you keep playing. You have to set yourself up to be able to play again and again and again. And so that's another aspect of flow. That's what we help organizations do. That's what leaders should be doing, is to build that capacity to continue to have flow in an organization. And yes, we base that on foundational principles. I was in a conversation today. We spent an hour and a half talking about purpose X and purpose Y, and great kind of new understanding about different ways to make decisions in the business because the purpose was narrowing in. And I don't think you can have flow if you're not really clear about why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish and what value is.
So following that logic, then flow is not the outcome and the goal. It's because you're focusing on the process, and you sort of said it's the process, not the outcome. So flow is not the objective; it's getting the right process. Am I fair in twisting your logic there?
Well, we'll have to draw this on a whiteboard that we don't have in front of us. But the purpose of an organization is to accomplish something. The purpose of a leader, in a sense, is to build a system to do that. And then what's the characteristic of that system that you ultimately want? Well, you want that system to flow. And then that system, when it flows, it can create the value. But there's always going to be shocks to the system. So you have to protect the system's capacity, and you may have to expand the capacity. You may want to expand the capacity. But the leader is working on the system, and the objective of the system is flow. And then the objective of the organization is to direct that system to accomplish its purpose. So there's a couple of layers there, and depending on which one we're talking about, we're actually putting stuff on the truck, or we're talking about how we make the stuff that we put on the truck.
Well, I think there's probably a fair bit more we can get into with that, but maybe we should park that truck till next time and then start to dive into the process.
Okay, let's do that. Great conversation. I love talking about this stuff, and thanks for the questions. I'd like to thank my colleague Dave. Dave and I are at Unconstrained. Bryn Griffiths is helping us with the recording. And until next time, consider your quest.